right now in Christianity that's knocking on the door of even our church to separate the lamb from the lion. Some of our authors have been writing about it, if you're reading Adventist literature lately, to make Jesus into sexy, handsome, goddess-worshipping father of children in a suburb in Galilee, as opposed to the Jesus of the end of the world and the Jesus of rules and the Jesus of organized religion. I have another article here that Pastor George sent me here a few months ago, and I finally got around to reading it. And it says this, and I subscribe to these lines: the Seventh-day Adventist Church derives its unique witness to Jesus Christ from a historicist reading of the apocalyptic prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. You say, what is historicist? What is historicist reading? Well, let's define it. This is important. You may want to jot this down this morning. Historicism understands these prophecies to portray a relentless march of God-ordained history, leading from the prophet's time up to a critical climax of the end of world's history. All right? Shall we repeat that? This is a really important sentence. This is worth the whole article. Seventh-day Adventist Church derives its unique witness to Jesus Christ from a historicist reading of the apocalyptic prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. Historicism understands these prophecies to portray a relentless march of God-ordained history, leading from the prophet's time up to a critical climax at the end of Earth's history. Any amen? Amen. So, is it still true? It's been 100 years. A lot of people say, well, you know, it's taken so long, who knows if those old prophecies in Daniel and Revelation are still true. I hear this all the time. I get literature all the time. I get emails. I get information all the time saying, is it still on? That would be the second coming, of course. Is it still on? Is it still going? Last night, to review, I pulled down a couple of little books off my shelf that I refer to from time to time. This says it's testimonies for the church. You know, some of that literature that a lot of people don't like to read anymore. This volume, volume 9, was released in 1909. The year the city of Emmet was incorporated, by the way. The angel that stood at my side then instructed me that but few have any conception of the wickedness existing in our world today, and especially the wickedness in the large cities. He declared that the Lord has appointed a time when he will visit transgressors in wrath for persistent disregard of his law. Written in 1909. What happened in the last century? Was the last century a pretty easy walk in the park? Or was it the biggest bloodbath in the history of humanity? In a previous statement, in the previous book, this is volume 8, it says here, the Lord is removing his restrictions from the earth, and soon there will be death and destruction, increasing crime and cruel evil working against the rich, who have exalted themselves against the poor. Those who are without God's protection will find no safety in any place or position. This past week and the week before, my wife and I have been watching a series on public television. Maybe some of you have caught it. It's the history of World War II from behind closed doors. Some of you may have seen it. And it describes the terrible struggle between Germany and the Soviet Union, primarily Russia. Some of the statistics are so gruesome that they boggle our minds. especially here in this country. During World War II, 17 million people died in the Soviet Union alone. 17 million people. That's 17 times, or 15 times or so, times the population of our state. There are places in southern Russia that I have visited where there are no men of a certain age. None. And what did the prophet say? Evil working against the rich who have exalted themselves against the poor. Those who are without God's protection will find no safety in any place or position. I think of the Holocaust, and I think of the people by the millions that were cremated after they had been gassed to death. The last century was not exactly a walk in the park, was it, for the human family? Oh, there have been bright spots. We cured, quote-unquote, communicable diseases, infectious diseases. We came up with all kinds of inventions that made life easy so that we could become more Epicurean. Right? There have been many advances that have blessed us and prolonged life, but there's always been a downside, isn't there? The time that the human race wanted, apparently God said okay, and He gave it. And we took advantage of it. It's really interesting for me to note some other trends. I just mentioned one more this morning.